thank you very much for spending an hour with us with Terranova in the context of cybersecurity awareness program for all your employees. Recently, we were awarded the contract vendor of record position for a cybersecurity awareness platform, which we'll be talking to you about this in the next hour. And I'm Sylvain Jacob. I'm the Vice President of Sales at Microserve. I'm supported here by Theo Zafirakos from Terranova. He's CISO coach and professional services security awareness speaker for Terranova. Our agenda today is we're going to do a quick overview of the Microserve services portfolio. Just to give context of where that Terranova solution fits into the overall services offering that we're delivering to customers within the cyber community. Then we're going to dive into creating a successful security awareness program. What are the best practices and a summary of the platform to help you, create an environment where your employees are in a position to be self-aware, to prevent them to create inadvertently some security challenges within your environment. And then we're going to go through a Q&A at the end. We should have enough time for about 5 to 10 minutes towards the end. So prepare your questions, put them in the chat, and we'll be able to answer your questions towards the end. This session is being recorded and will be available for your participation, for your review after. And please make sure that you pay attention to your emails. We will be sending you a lunch voucher for your participation today. So in summary, Microserve services portfolio looks like this. Many customers deal with us for IT procurement, for the procurement of infrastructure and user compute, and all of the IT technologies that are required to run your environment. And we are very well known for those services with an e-store platform and our warehousing and procurement best practices to support your IT needs. Then we'll move on to managed services. Sometimes customers, depending on their size, decide to rely on Microserve to help them with their services delivery inside their organization. We have a very strong and growing cloud offering for your needs, backup and disaster recovery, print management, talent acquisition when you're looking for people in the marketplace. Microserve is there to help you finding the talent that you require to run your business. And user compute, all the services from deployment activities inside the environments of your organizations, on-site warranty and disposal services, project and consulting, and then you have the IT security space, which Terranova is part of that offering in order for us to help you educate your employees to have a better secured environment. And then finally, the audiovisual best practice in terms of helping you collaborate within the new normal of teaching and working environment. There's a lot of activity happening with the audiovisual requirements that your organizations needs. So that's a summary of what Microserve's offered in the marketplace, and just you will hear from the cyber organization just after the conference. There will be a kickoff of the recent award of the cybersecurity awareness program platform that Microserve was just awarded a couple of weeks ago. With that, I will turn it over to Theo to go over the summary of the platform for the next few minutes. Over to you, Theo.
Thank you, Sylvain, and welcome everybody. So today's session is going to be about establishing a game plan to help your organization against cyber threats, especially those that are targeting your end users. In information security, we understand that we have to tackle people, process, and technology in order to better achieve information security, while awareness tackles the people aspect of information security. All right. So what is the impact of an effective security awareness program? You want to have at the end of the day your employees that not only are aware of what the cyber threats are, but also adopt cybersecurity behaviors and achieve a cultural shift to take a bit of the responsibility and understand that the role that they have to play and that they can and they do contribute to the information security of the organization. So you want to empower your employees by giving them the right tools, the right knowledge to do the right thing when the time comes. Obviously, you want to ensure compliance with regulations when it comes to information security, protection of sensitive information, personal information, and any other industry requirements for protecting any information that you have. Also, you may have internal compliance requirements that you're trying to achieve with the internal policies, and also make sure you satisfy your internal stakeholders when it comes to information security. Also, you want to have a program that engages users in order to maximize your participation. If your users are not participating to learning activities, they are not learning. So how do you achieve that maximum participation in order for them to acquire the knowledge that they need and then be motivated enough to apply it when the time comes? So the cyber threats have become more complex, more advanced than ever. A lot of cyber criminals have shifted their focus from targeting users, from targeting systems to targeting users. And we've seen a huge increase in the volume of attacks, especially phishing attacks targeting users. So we've seen a significant loss in the number of in the amounts of millions over the last year that has affected many organizations and across all industries. We see also that a big shift in malware like ransomware that is being delivered because it has a huge payout and a return of investment for the cyber criminals. All these attacks and tactics are continue to evolve and target your users, not necessarily your systems. So how do we train? How do we make our users part of our defense mechanisms to defend against these cyber attacks? A lot of, we hear very often people say that the users are the weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity. Well, I like to say that is the link that's given the least attention. A lot of organizations focus their efforts and their funding in implementing technology processes in place, and less effort and time to awareness and training. The return of investment is significant because awareness programs are not as expensive as technology, and also don't require as much implementation and planning as long as you do it right. Also, security awareness has become a challenge in a remote world environment. Now, with people working from home, we identify new knowledge gaps. People are working from home, have become sort of the administrators of their home office, right? Now we're losing the controls that are available at work, and we have to rely on the controls that are available at home, whether network, computer, or physical. Also, a lot of organizations with the shift to a hybrid or work from home environment, they paid less attention to training because it was a little more difficult to deliver because we no longer had people coming into the office where we talked to them in person. We could organize a conference. So we saw the reduction in training activities. Other organizations shifted fairly quickly and they noticed the need and they adapted the training program to accommodate the users working from home, not only in the way they deliver the training, but also the specific training that we have to deliver for the risks associated with a work from home environment. Okay, oops, there we go. a bit too fast. So, Terranova Security performs a gun phishing tournament on an annual basis. This tournament is co-sponsored by Microsoft, and we use phishing simulations that are commonly used in the wild by cybercriminals. And we use this opportunity typically in the month of October to send a phishing simulation to all participating organizations, whether they are our clients or not. So this gives organizations to benchmark themselves against other organizations similar size and industry. And also they get the opportunity to send a phishing simulation and also provide a learning moment for the users who clicked. Uh, we just completed the 2021 event, and we're going to look at the 2020 event and data from last year. So looking at the data globally, so organizations across the world were invited to participate, and we saw that the overall click rate was at 20%. We used a scenario that was highly sophisticated, high complexity. It was made to look like a legitimate email message, but there was some indicators that the informed user could have picked up. Right, the email sender was not official. It was a bogus document that was being that was being delivered. Users had no reason to click. And even if you believe the email message and you clicked, among all the participants, 13% submitted their password on a phishing website, which equates to almost 7 out of 10 of those who visited the phishing website submitted their credentials. So 67% of the clickers. That is not acceptable because the phishing website was clearly not secured. It was clearly identified next to the address bar. It didn't have HTTPS. It didn't have a padlock. And users did not know the minimum of a security website, a secure website, and they went ahead and they provided their credentials in a website that was not secure. If we looked at Canadian data, the results were even worse. We were at 5 percentage points higher click rate than the rest of the world. Even in the password submission rate, again, almost 5% higher than the rest of the world. And that would brought also our click to submission rate 3 percentage points higher. This could be attributed to the fact that we all have busy schedules. We tend to work a lot with email. We tend to respond. We tend to want to help others very quickly and then respond very quickly. So maybe that is part of our Canadian culture that makes us being at a higher click rate. And cyber criminals actually know that. And Canada is one of the highest targeted countries in the world from cyber criminals because we do have a tendency to click. So we have to change this. We have to bring our country to a lower click rate globally. Also, when you're designing security awareness programs, you have to think about what motivates organizations. So what is the purpose of putting a secure, not just an awareness program, but a security program in place, right? Organizations do have commitments to remain operational for their stakeholders and their clients. They may also have contractuals or compliance obligations that they want to achieve. Maybe you had a security incident in the past, and now you're putting security controls in place. Obviously, you want to address the most common risks and vulnerabilities that everybody's doing, which is the minimum standard that you should be doing. Also, you want to change the risky behaviors of your employees. Maybe you have auditor findings that identified weaknesses in your program, especially if you're being audited against a standard that requires an awareness program. And also, you probably deploying information security policies, updates, and you want to inform the users on how to achieve compliance and observe those policies. But that differs from what motivates employees. Employees are looking for a supervisor and peer motivation to do awareness and apply best practices. They want to be encouraged, recognized for doing the right thing. And a lot of people do have the desire to do the right thing and follow procedures, but how do we get them to do that? Others may be motivated by competition, challenges, gamifications, or they want to contribute to the organization or the program. They have a voice, they want it to be heard. Others may want to learn, and others will perform better when there's a reward system in place. The reward system doesn't have to be monetary. Any kind of recognition, such a title, well done, goes a long way. A lot of organizations put awareness programs into place and focus on recognizing only the bad behaviors and going after the people who did the wrong thing instead of recognizing the good behaviors, making them publicly known while within the organization, and say, look, so and so did the right thing. This saved us. This protected us. So we have to change a bit the way we do security awareness. That's why at Terranova Security, we have developed this 5-step framework, taking into account our over 20 years of experience, having deployed over thousands of clients and educated millions of cyber heroes. And having done that over the time, we've taken the best lessons learned, the best practices, and put this framework into place. So it's loosely based on the plan, do, check, act approach, with the initial focus on the analysis, understanding what the requirements are, and what are your objectives, what is your capacity, and going from there. So today we'll focus on step number 1 and step number 2, which are the most crucial steps and the steps that are most often omitted when putting a program into place. So let's look at the analyze step. So in the analyze step, you want to identify what are the security risks that are maybe affecting your organization, but also what are the security risks affecting organizations and users globally. What are your individual organization requirements? What are my awareness objectives? And any other key considerations that need to take into consideration. But also you need to know what is your current maturity level, your capacity to manage the program. Do I have the resources? Do I have the content to launch the program? Do I have the necessary staff? Do I have executive support and a sponsor to help drive the program? And also you have to make sure that you address any risks that may affect your project itself. When you're putting a program into place, you have to you're going to affect the lives of all the employees. Well, there's some risks that you need to consider at the beginning step. So in this first step, you're going to align your security awareness to your strategic program goals. Why am I doing an information security program to begin with? I'm not doing it just because I need to train employees. I'm not doing it because I don't want a virus infection. I'm doing it because I don't want to have downtime. I don't want to have financial losses. I don't want to be in the news. I have certain commitments. So you have to think of how security and awareness helps the overall strategic objectives of the organization. Compliance requirements, well, those are the ones where you don't have a choice. You have to do it, whether external or by third parties. And also you have to think about the target audience and their individual needs that I need to address. Also, you may also have different training topics by role that you need to address. Also, you may need to evaluate the level of knowledge of employees to help you prioritize and focus your efforts and time. Motivation and culture will help you promote the awareness activities, get users to participate, making sure that you have the right team, and if necessary, ensure that you deploy your program in the appropriate languages because users do learn better in the language of the native language. So your strategic goals, which is going to be the first step and the first activity you will be doing, is you have to clearly identify what you aim to achieve with your awareness program. And do not confuse objectives with how I'm going to achieve my objectives, right? My project objective is to put an awareness program into place. But once I put a program into place, well, that objective has been completed. This is the how I'm going to do it. What I'm going to do is I want to change the culture of the organization. So, they approach the adopt the see something, say something, right? Not ignore it or put it under the carpet. Right? So all of that information that you're going to collect and identify at the beginning is going to help you build your roadmap. Your audience also for your awareness program may vary the different topics that you're going to deploy and also how you're going to motivate them and engage them. So executives need to be informed of why information security is important with your organization. Managers need to be informed on how to support the awareness program and making sure that any business processes that they implement and they put into place also complies with security requirements. And your end users, well, the users of technology, the users of information, have to be informed on how to protect this information, how to safely use these technology assets that you give them. IT staff is often responsible for implementing security controls, technical security controls. Well, what specific training do I need to deploy to those users? And specialized training is for users that may have access to maybe health data, personal information, intellectual property, and so on, that may need to receive specialized training. During your analysis phase, there's several different activities that you could do in order to collect data. You could complete questionnaires, you could define your objectives, you could evaluate your capacity. You could also use a baseline simulation exercise to evaluate users' click rates, deploy questionnaires, quizzes to identify current behaviors and knowledge gaps, or perform interviews with the various stakeholders. Once you've done that, you will have the opportunity to evaluate the motivation and the different culture of the organization. Are users intrinsically motivated? Do they believe that they have something to gain, something to learn from an awareness program? Or do I need to mandate it and ask them to do it? Are they extrinsically motivated by a boss, a manager that forces them to do something just because they're told to do so? Or are they completely unmotivated? They're not engaged, they don't think they have a role to play, and they will not participate. So you have to take those factors into consideration when determining how I'm going to engage and motivate my users to participate to my training activities. Then you're going to identify also your role-based training. The role-based training is a little bit easier to deploy because those individuals in these roles, put the organization at a higher risk exposure because they have access to certain critical systems or data, and they need to receive some additional training activities compared to the rest of the users. So, and to support your program and to support your initiatives, depending on the size of your organization, your distribution of your employees, you may also leverage an ambassador program to become your feet, your eyes and ears on the ground to help promote your program and become a two-way communications channel between your department, which security departments are often understaffed, limited, and your end users, right? You're going to deploy an awareness program. Users are going to have questions. Well, how do I funnel those questions up and have someone in between that help translate security to the business and translate business to security? So an ambassador program could help assist with that intermediary step. And recently also because of the culture, because of the way the current workforce has grown up, gamification has come a long way to help users participate. Challenge reward system also go a long way to help motivate employees to participate, do more, and do better throughout the awareness program. So there's different ways you could implement gamification within your learning activities. In your planning phase, you're going to start taking all the elements that you identified in your discovery, your ingredients, and build the recipe. And this is where you're going to define your awareness program. So to do information security within an organization, it's not a one-person responsibility. You need to have a program sponsor that is going to ensure that you have the proper resources, staff, funds to run your program. And also the program sponsor typically is going to present the program to executive management to make sure that they obtain executive approval. The program manager is the person that is going to coordinate the activities that you've put in your plan. And often you may use a communications advisor because throughout the program, you will have routine communications that go to your users. You will need also subject matter experts in information security to identify which topics are the most relevant that will prioritize your program, and also the people who are going to operate your platform, and any additional contributors if you have a privacy group, a compliance group, a legal department that may contribute to the program and the priorities themselves. So then you're going to plan your program, you're going to define the roadmap, and you're going to customize the content. Sometimes within your awareness programs, you may want to deliver key messages based on the processes and best practices that you've established within your organization. So with the security awareness program, it's also your opportunity to remind employees, if you detect something, this is what you do. This is who you call. This is the phone number for the security department. Don't call your manager or don't call this person because that's going to delay. this is how you act. So it's an opportunity to communicate to your users some of the best practices. A lot of organizations put those best practices in place, but never take the time to inform and procedures in place, but don't take the time to inform their new employees. Well, this is how you do things at our organization. And also in your program, we recommend also that you include phishing simulations. As we saw in the Gone Phishing tournament, the organizations that performed the best were the organizations that had both awareness programs and phishing simulations in place, compared to organizations just had one of the two or nothing at all. Because users also received in their day-to-day simulations that may resemble real attack scenarios, and they were prepared. Phishing simulations are not there just to test employees. With any IT or technology training, you have the theory you take in an online training course, in a CBT course, while the phishing simulations are the practical exercises that you will do. Right? You will be exposed to the different scenarios. You get a hands-on opportunity to practice in a safer environment. And we all agree that clicking on a simulation or a real phishing attack is an emotional event. Well, we prefer that to happen in a simulation rather than the real world, where your password is not truly compromised and you won't suffer identity theft. And then throughout your awareness program, also it's very important to leverage various communications tools. Here at Terranova Security, we provide all the content, whether it's for courses, communications tools, and that's synchronized and aligned with the different themes that you may choose throughout the year. So if you're doing a theme on cyber threats and phishing, well, you're going to have your online training, you may have your posters, you may have your bulletins, desktop images. Let's get the message across to the users as many ways as possible, because if one of them doesn't work, maybe another one will. If one of them didn't capture the attention or the eyes of as many users, maybe a different format will work better. You have to also to understand that not every user learns the same way. That's why you have to use activities and learning modules that adapt, to users, like visual, interaction, audio, graphics, and so on. When you're building your roadmap, also you have to think about the duration of your campaigns. So a campaign may be covering a specific theme and will, have different activities throughout that campaign, as we mentioned earlier. Your course duration also, we've seen that go down over the last years. Organizations have reduced their courses from the typical of 45 minutes to an hour once per year to about 15-20 minutes on a quarterly basis. Doing campaigns a little bit more frequent. What is my awareness maturity? And is there any blackout periods due to vacations or other ongoing events that I need to consider into my schedule? When you're building your phishing campaigns also, you have to take into consideration the threats that you're trying to address. And what are the behaviors that would allow a threat to materialize within your organization? So a phishing platform like the Terranova platform will offer you different templates that address the behaviors that we're trying to address. And then for those who click, we could assign e-learning activities that are associated with that. And we always recommend organizations and anybody putting a phishing awareness program into place to start looking at the threats and behaviors that you want to address first, and then build your roadmap based on those. Most common threats that we see organizations addressing is attachments, drive-by URL, and credential harvesting. Those are the most dangerous threats that could cause the most damage to organizations. So start with those. The same thing could be done when developing awareness programs for basic security. So what are the threats? So this is some examples of threats that organizations and users face. Well, what is the behavior that leads this threat to materialize, affect me? What kind of category of education is required? Well, and what is the associated topics that I could deploy to my users? Am I suffering from loss of portable devices being stolen? Am I suffering from compromised passwords? What is my help desk recording as the most frequent calls from users as having suffered a cybersecurity incident, right? And building your program accordingly. And this is a blueprint of what a program would look like. So you would establish your baseline with a phishing simulation or a quiz at the beginning. And we don't recommend a lengthy quiz, about 12 questions, 7 to 10 minutes to complete. And then you deploy your security awareness topics. And then throughout the campaign, you reinforce it with key messages, maybe on a monthly basis. A routine email is very easy to deploy. Then you will test phishing with a phishing simulation, users' behaviors and actions. Have they learned? If not, you could leverage just-in-time learning for those who click to give an additional learning moment. And then you evaluate the results of your campaign and you adjust for the next cycle. When you're defining your metrics, also it's very important to identify metrics that are easy to capture and also you could act upon. The way our approach that we've taken in metrics is we're looking at the KPI and we look at them at three different columns, three different categories. Are they compliance related metrics? Are they behavior related metrics? Or are they metrics related to the culture of the organization and the users? Compliance is easy. All employees have received training on the phishing attack method. I've done my part. I've trained the users. And where do I get the data? Well, the training participation rates. And then for my effectiveness indicator, I want to see an increase, not in the number necessarily, but in the percentage of users who participated in the training. Now, when we look at the behavior, we want to reduce the number of incidents that result in an email attack. So what is my metric? Well, how many recorded malware or other infections that I had as a result of phishing? I could get that from my simulation or real data. And then I want to see a reduction in the percentage of users that opened email attachments or clicked on specific links. But not clicking on an attachment, deleting the message, I'm protecting myself. We want to go a step further and we want to get the users to report when they see something suspicious, because then they're not only protecting themselves, but they're protecting their colleagues and the organization. So this is where we're going to culture. We want to see an increase in the number of employees that report phishing activities. Right? We look at the number of reporting at events and increase the percentage of users who report these activities. Okay. Then once you identify your strategic objectives, you will identify what are the different actions, projects, activities that I'm going to put in place to satisfy. So when I'm defining the baseline, well, I'm going to identify the risks. What are the behaviors? Defined objectives. So for every objective that you put for your program, you will have to align with specific activities that at the end will feed up to the strategic objectives and help you report on performance and whether I'm achieving what I set out to do with my program. Okay. So for the next few slides, we have a questionnaire. So we conducted a survey in last virtual security awareness seminar with responses from over 500 participants. So I'll give you an opportunity to think about the answer, think about what you would put, and then we will see the results that came out of that survey. Okay. Oops. Oh yeah. The question's not here. Oh yeah, the questions are not here.
I think the questions and the answers are on the same page.
On the same page. Okay, yeah. Perfect. So how much do you allocate for mandatory security awareness training per employee per year, right? So as we could see here, the question comes up very often. What is the right amount of training that we want our users to follow? And typically we see around 1 to 2 hours. Some organizations do less. Some organizations do more, especially if they have contractual or regulatory requirements that they need to achieve. But on average, when we're talking about mandatory training activities, about 1 to 2 hours. So about 30 minutes per trimester. And that will help you achieve many of your objectives. Doing too much, you may lose your users because they will not retain if you're providing too much information at once. It's better to provide smaller amounts of information at a higher frequency so they have the opportunity to retain what they've learned. The next question is, how often do you launch security awareness training courses or campaigns? Monthly or every second month or quarterly are the frequency that majority of the organizations are doing. In the past, I would say 24 months. Most of the clients that we work with have deployed quarterly. They're easy to remember, they're easy to schedule, and they're easy to plan. So quarterly campaigns, and with each campaign addressing a specific theme, and then focusing throughout the campaign with different activities to tackle that specific theme. And then every 12 months, you reevaluate your priorities, and then you build a new program for the next 4 quarters. So it's always important even though you're building quarterly campaigns, to plan for about 12 months at a time, because the cyber threat environment and the risks change so fast that you need to have also a touch point to validate your program and adjust priorities. Once you've done your quarterly program, the next quarterly program may repeat some topics because they're still key and maybe I've noticed that my users have not learned, or you may deploy a whole new set of topics, right? You don't have to be doing the same thing year after year. And your users will thank you for it. They didn't forget something that necessarily they did 12 months ago. So, so take the chance to train them on more topics and train them using different formats and medium on an ongoing basis. What we typically see organizations repeat the same topics once every 24 months. So usually a program is about 24, maybe sometimes 36 months, and only then they'll start repeating the content. So then we asked how many organizations perform an analysis similar to what we saw in a first step. Again, a very crucial step to make sure that you're focusing your efforts in the right place, making sure that the users are receiving the training that is pertinent to their work, and also the priorities of the organization, and also what is happening in the wild, and so on. So some organizations do perform an analysis with in-house resources, and others maybe have a third-party vendor that does an overall security assessment, and at the same time also analyze the AI requirements for a security awareness and get recommendations. But it's always important to do some kind of analysis before you deploy your program. Then the next question we had is, what security awareness topics are the primary concerns for the next 6 to 12 months? And number one comes back always as cyber threats, phishing, malware, because we've seen the exponential increase in the type of attacks, the sophistication of the attacks targeting the users. In the last, I would say maybe 24 or 36 months, almost 44% of the education sector was targeted by ransomware attacks. So it's very important to focus on the threats that are the most menacing and that could cause this most significant impact within your organization. The next question was, what is the primary driver for implementing a security awareness and training program? And we see that most users do want to change behavior and create a cybersecurity aware culture. We want to shift the user mentality that it's not our responsibility, it's the IT department's responsibility, to that I could do something about it, I could contribute, I have a role to play. And also when the users or our employees are better aware on how to detect phishing attacks, whether emails or websites, they're not only protected when at work, but also they're protecting their home environment. They're protecting their families. They're protecting themselves from undue stress, right? Which could come back at work if something were to happen at home. So we want to create this security aware culture across across the organizations, across the country, so we could stop being the number one targeted country in the world by the cyber criminals. Okay. Then the next question was, which aspects of your security awareness program is the most challenging? And number one is employee engagement. How do we get employees to engage and to participate? Over the last, I would say, 24 to 36 months, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of organizations in the educational sector, from elementary schools, school boards, high schools, colleges, private sector, universities. And there's frequently a resistance, and I'm not sure I understand why in the sector, to among the, especially the faculty, to follow training programs. So, and I haven't had been able to pinpoint why is that, but employee engagement is very important, especially in the education sector, because everybody has a role to play. We understand that users may be your staff and your faculty may be a little bit more educated than the average user, but we have to take the opportunity to let them know that, we're not here to educate you. We're here to remind you of best practices and maybe to expose you to some of the threats that are outside of your day-to-day activities. So, what are the best engagement strategies that we could use to get users to participate? And also resources is a challenge. A lot of times the awareness program lands on the lap of IT or security, where they are subject matter experts, but they're not training and an awareness experts. We believe an awareness and training program really belongs in a HR or a training department, because they are the ones responsible for deploying and organizing training and learning activities for their staff. IT is responsible for contributing the topics, the material, the content, but not necessarily educating adults. Next question is, what would increase your user engagement rate for increasing security awareness rates? So this was a question that allowed for multiple choices. So shorter training activities. So that's why we've seen the shift to shorter courses. Again, if you think about how we consume information, whether on social media, social networks, the news, there go the days of reading a newspaper for the next 45 to 60 minutes, right? Right now, we consume information in short bursts. So a lot of users prefer that short burst, 5 to 10 minutes maximum. I could do it from anywhere at any time on any device. Also, gamification helps because it drives that instant reward system that a lot of us have gotten used to it. Instant gratification. I did something. I feel accomplished. I received that word. I received that recognition. Right. So those two factors are the most, I would say, evolving elements on getting users to participate. And also, a lot of organizations like ours are looking ways to innovate how we do information security awareness. And it's not just a standard sit in front of the screen, stare at a video for 45 minutes, and you're done. All right. So then the eighth question is, what metrics do you use to report on security awareness training success or the value of the awareness program? So phishing simulation, pass, fail, a lot of organizations use those. Again, it should not be your only factor, because we typically want people to click because that's how they learn. And also, what I recommend to organizations that achieve a low click rate, well, now it's the time to increase the complexity. Because yes, I could have a low click rate because my users have gotten accustomed to it. They know how to detect phishing messages, or maybe my templates or my scenarios are too easy. Well, time to increase the complexity, the same way as the cyber criminals would. So increase the complexity, see if you could achieve those low click percentages. Also, training participation to see whether my users participated and consumed the material. The first step into learning anything is as following the courses. But again, then we need to do additional benchmarks and also collect user behavior data. Number D is the most crucial, but it's also the most difficult to achieve, because this is now looking at the actual user actions. Yes, they took the training. Yes, they learned. Yes, they performed weather and simulations. But what happens in the real world? Are they applying their best practices when it really counts? So establishing those type of reporting, like looking at your service desk, looking at the mode of infections, reported events, how are people, getting compromised? What actions are they taking, or actions they did not take that resulted into the compromise? And question number 9. So what is the most important consideration when preparing a security awareness training program? So various training formats was the number one answer. So being able to provide the material in different formats from a different audience to consume. Again, being able to tackle them at different points in time or their daily lives in an email when they're visiting an internal website or during a lunch or learn or having another activity to get them to participate and learn. Again, content customization and personalized branding is also fairly important because you want the users when they participate to your training activity to have a familiar look and feel. So using colors and logos that represent your organization will give them additional also opportunity to recognize the training as part of our organization and make it easier to consume and follow. And also, who is responsible for implementing and managing security awareness training activities? What we talked about earlier, in most cases, is the information technology or infosec department. Again, they should not be doing it alone. If your organization have a cybersecurity governance committee, engage the committee for decisions and approvals. That committee may be like a cross-functional team, like as we say in C, that includes IT, infosec, HR, legal, compliance, and so on. Very few organizations have adopted also the HR department as being responsible for training. But we in our case, we have dealt with some clients where we're dealing directly with the training department, and they are the ones that are managing the program and so on, and we providing the recommendations on what content to deploy. And we believe that's the right place. But if you cannot have your training department or HR department take over, have a cross-functional governance training team to at least approve the content, approve the schedule, and support the program. Okay. And the worst case scenario where all related activities are assigned to one person, a lot of times those activities will fall off the priorities list and often not get done. If you do want to learn more, we've documented this framework in a book, and it's available as an ebook for you to download. We go through extensive detail, step by step, not just the first two steps of the framework, but the full 5 steps, and also including the ones we did not see. The deploy phase, so how do you successfully deploy what you put in your plan? Your measure, so how to capture data and report on the data, and your optimize phase, which is looking back, see what worked, what didn't work, and adjust accordingly. So we invite you to download the book. It's free. And now it's time for questions.
All right. Thanks, Theo. Well, I keep reminding, people and that stat that you shared with the team earlier about Canada being the most targeted country in the world. That's pretty scary, but I think you've provided a framework and the best practices for our customers to, build a cybersecurity awareness program. So just before we turn it to Q&A, I hope you found this information valuable. As you can see, we have the expertise, and this is supported by a pretty extensive platform that will help you get where those best practices are that Theo shared. The solution's been fully vetted. Oops, should have turned that off. The solution's been fully vetted by the Cyber Cybersecurity Committee. Just going to decline that. And we certainly have been awarded the program from being best value, from a price and functionality, flexibility, and being a Canadian company from Terranova. Our sales team is available. If you got any questions, I know my team is reaching out to each Cyber member right as we speak to have a discussion around this solution and help you get to a better secured environment. With that, I'll turn it over to the group for some questions. I'll stop sharing. my screen and go back to the team sessions.
One of the questions that we get very often is when it comes to motivation. So how do we motivate our employees to participate to training? Whether you make your program mandatory or not, a lot of times, even if the program is mandatory, people may still not be motivated enough to follow the courses. So that typically is the biggest challenge that a lot of organizations are facing. And there's different approaches that organizations could take to motivate their employees. Right. Initially, the first step is to get executive sponsorship for the program and announce the program either by like a senior leader of the organization, not just IT department saying that we have an awareness program in place. Because when the communication comes by someone with a higher level of authority, users may take it a little bit more seriously, right? And that this is an important aspect for the organization. And also, the other thing also that organizations could do is tackle employees from the very first day, or maybe sometimes even before they start, to establish that security is important here from the day one. Right? There's a difference between the users that have been here for a long time and they've established their own ways and there are certain ways of doing things. But capturing your new users from day one, saying security is important. We have a program in place. We have policies and procedures. This is what you're supposed to do. And then eventually you're going to start creating the culture. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes time, but you have to be active on it.
I think you touched on it, Theo, earlier. What's in it for them? And I think if you touch the impact that they could have on their personal lives, for their own personal security, I think that might be an angle that we could use.
Yeah, and and the analogy I'd like to use is that of wearing a seatbelt when you get into the car. Right. It took the government many years to convince users to wear a seatbelt, drivers to wear a seatbelt when they get into a car. Right. And still to this day, some people wear a seatbelt just because they wanted to get a ticket. Right? Because they're afraid of the law, right? So that's the stake approach. But others are convinced that if I wear a seatbelt, I'm going to save my life, right? So the same thing with security awareness, right?
Yeah.
You follow it either because you're told to or because you're convinced that it takes a value. But I don't only wear a seatbelt for myself, right? I have a family that's dependent on me. Right. So the same thing with security. If my credentials get compromised, if my bank account gets compromised, if I suffer identity theft, then I will not be able to contribute and support my family.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't just do it for myself. I do it also for those around me. And security awareness becomes a little red blinking light. So if you forget, we just remind you
Yeah.
what to
Yeah.
do.
Exactly. Good. Appreciate you joining us today. I'd like to wish you a great rest of your conference. Talk to you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, everybody.
Thanks, Phil.